No, your eyes are not deceiving you. I do in fact hate Victarian Greyjoy, for some of the same reasons that I've listed off for other characters in previous videos, and for some different ones that I will get into later in this one. And I know this is probably going to be one of my hotter videos regarding this character, because a lot of people really like Victarian and really enjoy his chapters. And I am not one of those people. In fact, not only do I not like him personally, but I don't think he needs to exist as a POV, and I think him being a POV character shows an actual flaw in George R. R. Martin's gardening-type writing style. But we will get into that more later in this video. Starting off with just who Victarian Greyjoy is. Victarian Greyjoy is the worst. Not only is he just simply the worst, but he's a really annoying and difficult to deal with kind of individual who tries to justify all of his actions, no matter how terrible they are. The first real bit of characterization that we get for Victarian Greyjoy is that he hates his brother Euron because Euron raped his wife, which caused Victarian to need to beat her to death because she was pregnant from Euron Greyjoy's raping. And he says he killed her because he had to, that he brought her down to the rocks and beat her to death with his bare fists because it was necessary and it wasn't his fault. And why? Who are we kidding? Victarian Greyjoy did not need to beat his wife to death because she got raped by his brother. Why is she being further punished for something when she was the victim? It just doesn't make any sense. And sure, maybe it's his Ironborn culture, maybe it's the fact that he's kind of stupid, or just not kind of, is stupid, but who cares? That's not a valid excuse. This guy beats his wife to death because she got raped. Like, what is that about? And what's really quite crazy is this is the biggest point of characterization that we get for Victarian. For the remainder of his chapters, he is now setting sail to go to Meereen to claim Daenerys for Euron. And this goes into the second aspect of why I can't stand Victarian. I just really don't like how many people underestimate Daenerys, and I think Victarian is really stupid for thinking that he's just going to walk into Meereen and essentially take one of Daenerys' dragons, or all of Daenerys' dragons. It's just really naive and really annoying, to be quite honest. And it's not like he plans on taking Daenerys' dragons and doing good things with them. No, he wants to take the dragons for himself so he can usurp Euron Greyjoy and then just take over whatever he wants to do on his own anyway. That's his whole thing at the Kingsmoot, is he just wants to continue the Ironborn culture. He wants to continue raping and pillaging and fighting, and I guess this is a criticism that expands broadly to the Ironborn in general, but it still applies to Victarian, is they're just terrible people that look forward to raping, pillaging, and destroying lives just because that is the Ironborn way. And that is just an objectively terrible thing. I mean, I really don't think that many people are going to be arguing with me about this. Victarian Greyjoy just is a bad person. Like, we're all okay agreeing on that. Where this gets more complicated for me is the fact that I genuinely don't like him as a POV character. Not just personally, I just don't like his chapters at all. Now, I get why some people do. Victarian Greyjoy is this pirate who is fighting and isn't the brightest, and it's just, we're just in the head of a pirate doing pirate things, which is cool, and that one scene where he has that battle and cuts his hand is pretty metal to read. But that's really not what I come to A Song of Ice and Fire for. I didn't pick up this book series to watch pirates fight one another and be in the head of a brute all the time who just wants to war and pillage. I know that people enjoy it because it's a change of pace, it's something different, and maybe on my reread I'll feel differently about Victarian, but for my first read-through, it just felt like every time I got to a Victarian chapter, I was just having to truck through it and just get to the next one, because not much is really going on in his chapters. I would say the best part about Victarian's chapters is simply we get to see Euron from his perspective. His dynamic with Euron and the way in which they engage with one another is by far the most interesting part about his chapters. But here's the thing, his brother Aeron does that 10 times better. So the thing that I'm most satisfied with the character of Victarian Greyjoy is just a lesser version of a character that we already have. And I will be making a video on Aeron soon because he's one of my favorite POVs in A Song of Ice and Fire. In many ways, I just find Victarian Greyjoy to feel like filler. When we really think about it, do we need to get Victarian chapters on his way to Meereen? Do we even need to get any Victarian chapters at all? Because me personally, I feel like he could show up to Meereen, try and take Daenerys' dragons, try and use the horn, do whatever he's going to do, and it will still not only make sense, but be enjoyable. I don't think we necessarily need to be in his head. And maybe this wouldn't be a problem if the pacing for the later books in A Song of Ice and Fire weren't already all over the place. Now listen, I love A Feast for Crows, and A Dance with Dragons is my favorite book in the entire series, so I am not saying this as someone who can't stand the later books, but the pacing in those two books is difficult. They are packed to the brim. A Dance with Dragons is an incredibly long book, and I just feel that the inclusion of Victarian Greyjoy is a POV that we definitely didn't need, and it serves to not only bloat the story, but make the situation at Meereen all the more complicated. Like, let's really think about the POVs that we currently have in Meereen. We have Tyrion, phenomenal character. I don't need to explain why it's important that we have him as a POV character in Meereen. Then we have Barristan, who is currently serving as Eyes on Meereen. Barristan is some of the best chapters in the entire story, even though it only has a few at the end of A Dance with Dragons. And then while she's not there presently, Daenerys, who is one of the main characters and a phenomenal character in her own right. And then we have Victarian Greyjoy, showing up to further complicate the situation, and I don't know what purpose his POV is going to serve in The Winds of Winter. I genuinely just feel that he bloats the story, and that his POVs in general don't really need to exist at all. And yes, this is obviously going to be a very biased take, but when I was reading Dance for the first time over the summer, I was so locked in with every single chapter in the second half of that book. And then when I saw Victarian's name, I just sat there and was just like, damn, this is about to be a rough chapter. I couldn't wait to get through it. And then when I saw it again, I shed a tear because I just wasn't the happiest camper. So yeah, I am just frankly not a fan of Victarian Greyjoy. On a personal level, he's a terrible person, not a good human being. He murders his wife because she was raped by his brother. He likes to pillage and rape and is furthering the toxicity of the Ironborn culture. He's probably the best example in A Song of Ice and Fire of just the idea of toxic masculinity if it were to apply to this world, just incarnate, and that's just not a good thing overall. But beyond that, I just genuinely don't like his role in the story. I don't think he's a necessary character. He has 5 POV chapters, and I feel they bloat the story to a degree that they don't have to. Other characters do the best aspects of his character better. And all in all, I just hate Victarian Greyjoy. But with all that being said, if you've made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching. Please let me know in the comment section down below what you thought, even if you disagree, which I'm assuming many of you will, and I hope to catch you in the next one. Peace.